Tori, I think that a lot of agencies have been so distracted over the last year
Yes.
or so with wondering about what the economy is going to mean for their agency and whether they need to look at new business differently, whether they need to look at the way they're running their agencies differently. Um, and I am so intrigued by how passionate you are about running your agency, building your agency in alignment with your values as an owner, and how that helps you win or how that has a multiplier effect on the performance of your agency. So, how'd you get there? I mean, there's a lot of things for an agency
Oh,
leader to worry about and think about.
yes.
How did this
There so
become a
are.
passion point for you?
It is. It is a passion point for me. And I think, being a woman and having a different perspective and seeing, I think, all the common advice out there for agencies and for businesses as a whole. My mom has been in sales my whole life, and I've heard the pitches and I've heard the inspirational speeches and the business advice that I think is really classic, that I feel like is just everywhere. And a lot of it tells to me it feels like the same story, and it's part of why I honestly fought being an entrepreneur for a while, because I didn't identify with it. Where I feel like the story they tell you is you're going to kill yourself for several years, and eventually you'll turn around this big paycheck and you'll be a millionaire, and then you'll be happy. So just push through, kill yourself in the meantime. It doesn't matter. You can burn yourself out. It's fine. They tell you everything's about process. Hire people as cheaply as possible, the most junior people possible, break down all the processes, train them on all the things. And then really you're again, you're doing everything and you're doing all this work in order to be what I would call the McDonald's of agencies,
Mm-hmm.
where you are breaking down those processes. You're doing work to make the work as accessible as possible and as repeatable as possible. So it's as profitable as possible. And you're really focused on your margins, right? I feel like this is what everyone always talks about. And that was frustrating for me because I don't want to be McDonald's. And I'm not saying that's not a valid way to do business. It is. It's incredibly profitable. McDonald's is out there making a lot of money. They're proving that it can work. And I think that there are agencies out there proving that that model can work. But I don't think that that means that that is what everyone has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can start with your values of what you want from life. And one of my values, and my frustrations being a woman and being a mom, was that I wanted to not work full time. And this was before the advent of remote work. And I loved working in-house, and I loved my senior leadership positions and marketing, and I wanted to keep doing that. But I couldn't make that time trade-off anymore if I also wanted to be able to spend time with my kid. And I was also really suffering from burnout at the time. I had been at a startup, and it was an amazing rocket ship experience that I wouldn't trade for anything. But I was also exhausted, and I needed to change um, my environment in order to deliver, and to be there for myself, really, to give myself to heal, the time to heal, the time to be what I wanted to be. And what I was seeing out in the world was, if you wanted to be part-time, and I'm not talking 15 hours a month or 15 hours a week, I'm talking like, hey, 30 hours a week or 35 hours a week, or even just a 40-hour work week instead of startup life, which is often what, 80 plus hours a work week. Right? So, or, in your field, I'm thinking of lawyers. When you're billable hours, you get the big salary, or if you go part-time, suddenly you're in a position where they want you to make $20 an hour or $40 an hour, which was not what you were making as a full-time staffed person. So is there a way, and is there a business model that can be successful, where people can be in their lives and experience their lives and recover from their burnout, or be there for their kids, or be there for their ailing parents that are aging, or be there and, recover from some health concerns, especially during COVID times. Um, Life is varied and throws things at us, and there are stages that we go through that we need maybe more time for our lives, but that doesn't mean we don't care about our work. That doesn't mean we're not providing value. And so I came to it really with an agenda almost of, I think that this should exist. I don't think I should be forced to make an incredibly subpar salary because I don't want to run at this 80 hours a work week.
Mhm.
Is that possible? So I set out for myself to see, can I do this for myself? And then as I went from being a freelancer into being, an agency owner with having employees, W-2 staff and freelancers, how do I afford that opportunity for others? And can I use that to help me grow and to be a differentiator? And spoiler, I think I've
Yeah.
done it, and I think others can too.
So I think that um, a lot of agency owners will be wondering about the pathway to taking any personal value system. The one that you've named is a very
Mhm.
powerful one, right? It's a priority for many owners for different reasons, no matter what their life circumstances or desires. Um, but at some point, you have to figure out how to operationalize it, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm sure that you've been on a journey of figuring out how to internalize this for your agency, for your business, for your life personally, but then also how to turn it into an opportunity
Yep.
for the individuals, the talent that works with you. And, the number one and two concerns of every agency owner who I talk with, and I talk with hundreds of them, is business development and talent
Yep.
acquisition, management, training, growth. So how did you take the steps to take those values that you have personally based on your life experience as a corporate person, then a solo, and then an agency owner,
Mhm.
and turn them into advantages either for recruiting or operational efficiency? Or what was your pathway? Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of us love it. It's Kool-Aid we want to drink, but how did you do it? How did you
Yeah.
actually?
A lot of it was testing, a lot of it was listening, and a lot of it was seeing, I think, what worked and how people responded to it. So an example there, to make this more actionable, was paying people very promptly. So I think specifically, whether they're W-2s, they have they have their payroll cycle, whatnot. So let's talk about freelancers, what the freelance environment is out there. So that was because I was a freelancer. So I got to step in the shoes of what it's like to be a freelancer. And I know that companies pay them dramatically different ways, right? You could have net 30 terms. You could ask them to invoice you 2 months later. And then you have net 60-day terms. And that means I have done 4 months of work without receiving any money in my paycheck. And what does that mean for who gets to apply for your jobs and who can have the opportunity to be a freelancer for you? Think of the privilege it requires to not be paid for 4 months,
Right.
and to trust that you will pay them eventually.
Mhm.
So having experienced that and, knowing that I'm in a lucky place and that I could afford my bills because I have a partner who can help me pay those bills. So that meant that I could bridge that gap. But I looked around at other talent and I knew that they couldn't afford to do that, even though in some cases they were better at these specific tasks than me, right? And so if you want to take advantage of that talent, if you want a bigger talent pool to choose from, you can pay more promptly. You can decide to pay net 30 terms. You have received the works. You can choose to pay immediately.
Mhm.
You can build your processes around, hey, this is a problem that I've identified that I'm not getting the freelancer quality that I want. And part of that is because I've limited my talent pool to people who don't feel like doing it, can't do it. Um, refuse to do it, and I'm going to pay them more quickly so that um I have a bigger talent pool. So I think that's a core advantage. Like, who can you have as your freelancer? What is the quality of the work? And I think when you do pay promptly, I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people like, wow, I've paid people within a day, within hours of them sending me invoices. And
Mhm.
especially for new freelancers or people that have been doing it for a long time, for people that have to chase down agencies to pay that paycheck,
Yeah.
you really build distrust. And if you think freelancers don't talk about you in your business with each other, and that means you're also limiting your pool, you're kidding yourself.
Mhm.
So choosing to pay very promptly, sometimes in advance, sometimes right when they invoice, whatever works for you based on the needs of your freelancers, that can vary, but that's an actionable, specific, I think, example of if you do this, you have a bigger talent pool. You also, I think, have a more loyal talent pool because now they trust that you will pay them, that you will pay them promptly. They're going to come to you first when they have availability.
Mhm.
So I have a pool of freelancers who want to work with me above other agencies, both because I pay them effectively and because I'm going to pay them on time. And what does that mean for how, yeah, people want to work with you,
Right.
which I think is a core advantage.
I think that that is an example of something that seems so simple in concept and obviously isn't well implemented universally because you
Yeah.
are that is something that puts agencies at a disadvantage who don't institute something like it. It does limit their talent pool. Um, how did you operationalize this particular value with your on staff people, your W-2 people? Is it something that is it part of your core values as a company that you express to them and inform them about? Or does it sneak its way into your hiring criteria, or how did you operationalize that for
Mhm.
your core
The core
employee
team.
team? Yeah.
I mean, actually, in terms of like physically implementing it, it's nice because Gusto will do that for you and we'll set it up on the system and you can choose the right package that will pay them. Are you going to direct deposit? Are you going to make it easy for them? Are you going to pay within 2 days? Are you going to pay within a week? Like when you issue that, I think literally like what package you decide to pay for will choose how quickly they get paid.
Mhm.
In terms of communications, it's built into our internal documentation. I think this is something we say is something we value and that is important to us. So when you feel something strongly, making sure people know and understand that, both verbally and written in your documentation, I think can be helpful. So when we're looking to hire in a new role, they see that that's important to us.
Mhm.
And we will speak of that during interviewing processes, and we make that happen, which I think is the biggest barrier because I think a lot of companies don't know that it's a problem, but then because they don't know it's a problem, they also have to get over the barriers of like the logistics of, okay, but that's more annoying for payroll staff to have to figure that out. Okay, so how do you make it less painful for you to do, or how do you accept the cost of that based on what you're getting in return, and
Right,
really understanding what that trade-off is for you?
right. I know one of your passion points around all this is giving people the ability to earn their top dollar based on their skills and their value, to the business and to your clients, but not necessarily working in a full-time capacity. And so is your team comprised of all part-time people? Do you have a little of both, or how have you built?
It's a little of both. I mean,
Okay.
and how part-time they are depends on the person and their needs. So it's a bit of a what do we need and how much of this thing do we need? And what are their needs in their life and how badly do we want them? It's a balance of all the things.
Mhm.
So we have people at 30 hours, we have people at 20 hours. So there are like legal constraints and guidelines around when I can offer, say, health
Right.
benefits, for example. Like you're not going to find many health insurance providers that are willing to let you pay for health insurance for someone that's not at least at 20 hours a week, for
Mhm.
example. So there can be some barriers to what you want to do based on that, or you might find a one-off insurance provider that's willing to make that exception for you, but
Mhm.
that's going to vary state to state. So there's some logistics certainly um, to work out. So it's all wrapped up in what do we want to do? Can we make it happen? Can we communicate that to them? So I care about paying them. I care. The benefits is actually a big part of the deal. It's not just about paying them appropriately per hour.
Right.
And really figuring out what is the hourly translation of a yearly salary. But yes, the short answer to your question is it's all of the above and it's based on what they need. And I think that also gives me a lot of flexibility, frankly, as an agency owner, because it means I don't need to wait till I have 40 hours of work to hire.
Yeah.
And that means the team is not dead in the meantime, trying to pick up the slack from this person who's not on the team.
That's, I think, an important thing to talk about too, because I think a lot of owners would assume that it will be a management hassle to have to make sure all gaps are filled. There's no gaps in the client experience or in your income stream as a result of, slowing the work down because people aren't working as much
Yeah.
in terms of your billings and your cash flow. So there's a lot I know that a typical owner would be thinking about in terms of putting together this patchwork of talent that may be loyal on a full-time basis to the goals of the company, but not actually working on a full-time basis. So, and I think maybe that's a distinguishing point to talk about too, is building culture amongst people who are balancing their careers with you with the other aspects of their lives, whether those be personal, professional, or whatever. How do you ensure that they stay focused and that your clients are having a seamless experience?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're a digital agency and we're completely remote anyway. And we were by default from day one. We were always remote. So I think there's a certain remote skill set that lends itself to a good client experience where, you need to know the habits that you have to have in yourself to stay accountable to things when you're not in an office. When some people's cue for I need to get work done is I saw them and I remembered, oh crap, I owe them something. I need to work on this deliverable to hand it to them on time, right? If that's your cue to get work done in a remote environment, you're out of luck. So you need to build those habits in yourself and you need to seek those habits and see what those habits are in people that you hire. Because that is in itself a unique skill set. I also hire specifically for empathy, care, and passion. So just because you work part-time and want to work part-time doesn't mean you don't care passionately about your work. And I think a lot of the business world puts those two together. Like you either care everything or you care not at all. And I don't think it's quite that dichotomy. So I think you can pull that together. And help them. Sorry, my brain is swirling. Are we able to edit this?
Go
on. There's so much we can do to help people really give them those roles, give them the part-time benefits, and really help them do what they want and give them the freedom and the control and the power over their own lives, which I think we can treat people like grown-ups and they will act like grown-ups.
Yeah, I have found we founded our business virtually as well. This is not my first firm that I currently own and run, but it is one that I built to serve a very specific audience, and I built it from day one to be mobile and virtual. And I think I point that out only because, and I don't know if this has been your experience as well, but there is a difference in the way, there's a different level of intentionality around communication.
Yes.
I think with a virtual firm versus a firm that used to be analog and then went virtual because they had to, or because the pandemic made them feel like, being in a physical place didn't make sense for them anymore. But I think we err on the side of over communication sometimes. We probably have more meetings than would be necessary, perhaps if we were in a physical office space together, and more redundancy in our electronic communications than maybe, but it is for the purpose of making sure we don't miss a step, that we don't make assumptions about stuff getting done or what the progress of it is. And So I think that kind of intentionality around communication that also lends itself to being successful when you've got people who are there at different times or working different schedules or working in different parts of the business, right? To
Mhm.
your point. And if communication is one of your core values, in addition to giving opportunities to people who have non-traditional, work paths, I think it can go a long way towards making you really punch above your weight as
Yeah.
an agency, any kind of service business. So I don't know if that's been your experience too with the way you handle internal communications, but I know
Communications is
it has been in
everything.
my firm.
Yeah. I mean, if I think that's the single most important thing you can do is communicate effectively, to set
Mhm.
expectations well. To be transparent and honest with them for the good and for the bad. When are they shooting themselves in the foot? When do they need to spend more budget? And you're uncomfortable to say it because that means you'll make more money, but really it's for their own benefit. Like you have to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations because it's the right thing to do for the client. And
Right,
it's the right thing to do for your business and for everybody's long-term. So those pieces together, like the real, honest, good intentions and the ability to communicate that effectively
right.
are really core. It's a service business at the end of the day. And if people aren't happy, if they don't feel valued, if they don't understand why the work that you're doing is valuable, then they're not getting value. It doesn't matter.
So talk about the results you've been able to attain in terms of your ability, the talent you've been able to attract. Has this actually given you a shot at candidates who you feel like you might maybe not have brought into your orbit if you
Oh
did
yeah.
things more traditionally? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that means that people that would have otherwise demanded a big full-time paycheck in order to, have the big title and, everything you want out of your career. You want the title, you want the money, things that make you feed your ego a little bit, but they know they also want things from their lives. So if they're going to be killing themselves for their work, then they're going to require this criteria. But if they have the level of flexibility that gives them the things that they want in their life, can they work remotely? Can they work part-time? Can they control their schedule so they're working later nights and they don't have to wake, they can sleep in the morning? Like what flexibility looks like for your team can vary and can align with your values and what's important in terms of what you want to offer for flexibility. But they want that and they want so I think it means I've been able to hire specific people full time that would have otherwise demanded a lot more that I couldn't have afforded.
Hmm.
But now they have that control. I think specifically with freelancers, it's a core advantage because now I can get some very cool names that are the niche expert on this. And this person's the niche expert on this. And that
Hmm.
means I can pull in the big guns for specific projects where we can really escalate and solve this nitty-gritty problem in this space in a really meaningful, quick way, in a way that's economically viable for the client. They can
Hmm.
afford that because it's just this little bit,
Hmm.
because this person's willing to work with us because they trust us and like us.
Right. How do you feel like, have you measured the impact of, since you've, ramped up running the agency based on this really clear viewpoint and value? Um, what about the impact at the end of the day on your margins and your profitability? I don't want numbers, of course, but I know
Mhm.
that margins and tight margins are constantly vexing agencies. And have you seen this philosophy in your talent attraction? Have an impact one way or another on the profitability of the
Yes.
business? Okay.
So it definitely will increase your costs. Let's be transparent about that. If you're
Yeah.
paying people what they're worth, if you're paying people on time because you're not holding on to that cash in your bank account, for 4 months, your
Right.
cash flow, like it costs more. I think it also means employees are happier and they're staying longer. I think it also means clients are happier because the people that are servicing them care and are devoted to them and are delivering for them. So it has also meant I've been able to increase my prices.
Mm.
It also means I can hire more senior people, again, for smaller bits,
Right.
And that means the value that the client is getting is much higher. So what I can make and per project, per retainer has also dramatically changed. And
Got it.
that's like, instead of working towards the bottom denominator being the McDonald's, how do I be the McKinsey or something along that scale? That's a very big, long scale, right? But how do we
Right.
be in that direction instead?
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think it can also change that.
Okay. So positive impact definitely on the top line and filtering that down through into profit, because it will challenge your cash flow initially and cost you more per person, but you're able to reap that bigger benefit in terms of what the client's willing to pay because of the caliber of the talent.
Yep. I
Got it.
also think of it in terms of like my personal quality of life.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to kill myself. So I want to enjoy my life too. And so I'm willing to make less on the margins in order to make my quality of life
Mhm.
less bananas in the meantime, which means I can sustain this for longer. I'm
Right.
playing the long game, not the short-term game.
Yeah. My friend Drew McClellan, who owns Agency Management Institute, calls what a lot of what you're talking about, he calls the difference between being a Wonder Bread factory and an artisanal bakery. That's the
Yes.
analogy he always uses. And
Mm.
as you pointed out earlier, either model is fine. You just have to commit to it and not try to jam the processes and the numbers that work for one type into the other model, because that does not work. That
It
just
does
creates
not
stress.
work. And
No.
I've seen agencies really be frustrated with why can't we get clients to stick around longer? Why can't we,
Mhm.
these retainers, they're too short. We have a goal of increasing the length of a retainer till this, and we're just not hitting it. Or
Yeah.
why can't I increase my price per hour or projects? Like people are just not buying. And if you're aiming for having the lowest, most junior staff, why would they pay more for
Right.
you all the time? You
Right.
know, do you have dedicated account managers? Do they know how to communicate the problem? Do they know how to put out fires? Do they know how to sell your value?
Mhm.
You get what you pay for. So you have to figure out the right balance that corresponds to the kind of, yeah, exactly the kind of business you want to be.
Well, look, and a more satisfied owner just automatically creates a better culture. It just, I've seen it time and time again. The happier you are, whether you've built the agency to sustain a certain lifestyle, or whether you are building a legacy of some sort, whatever whatever drives you, a happier owner creates a happier culture. And that means building the agency in alignment with your values, no matter what they are. Yours happens to be attracting talent with creative and alternative work styles,
Mhm.
but getting top caliber people and getting the advantage of that disseminated to your clients and the work that you do. Someone else might have a different value system, creating social impact with the work that they do. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what it is, but if you carry it through
Exactly.
in the way that you're building the agency, then you're happier as an owner and your team is happier and therefore more loyal, and your clients will be too, I think.
Absolutely. I think there's more to social values and more to the things you want to do for your business outside of the story I think we hear that's mostly focused on the marketing campaigns that you're going to run around value-based campaigns for your customers. It's
Right.
so much bigger, and it can really be built into the DNA of how your company works, how you build your processes and operations in order to deliver against those values. So think about how you want to be different, what kind of things you want to stand for, what you think that might gain for your business, how that differentiates you as an employer,
Mm.
and in terms of your service that you provide, and you know, live your values.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It can be really powerful.
Fascinating. I can't let you go without taking one quick turn here. You're an agency that focuses a lot on SEO, and I know you're thinking a lot about, because I've read some of of your content around this topic. What is I'm going to put you on spot. One prediction for how AI is going to impact SEO work in 2024.
Ooh, that's a juicy one.
I
And I
know.
have frankly a lot to say.
Yeah.
So much is going to happen, and it's already frankly happening. Google is experiencing right now a spam attack, the likes of
Mhm.
which, the scale of which we have not seen.
Mhm.
Of course, there's ebbs and flows in terms of how Google has to deal with spam, and sometimes they're worse at dealing with it, and then they step it up, and then it kind of reduces. But Google is struggling with search results right now, and that's creating a lot of pain for a lot of different people, frankly,
Okay.
across a lot of different industries. And that's not only because, but largely due to the scale of content created for and via AI. So whether that's, think of the AI spam, comment spam, user review spam, user generated content spam within Reddit, right? So Google decided to show Reddit, to show real user conversations and results in Google, because product review sites weren't necessarily doing a great job showing an authentic user experience. So they
Mhm.
started showing Reddit more. And now Reddit's seeing a huge spike in bots interacting on their site. So it is creating a lot of chaos right now. And between that and generational differences, different users, younger users using TikTok as a search engine, whether that's because different things land in their feed and it's discovery. So if we think about, where am I going to eat dinner tonight? I want to go out to dinner and I'm visiting this city. Sometimes that can be delivered in your field, and it's more like I never get to the point of searching for it because I've already answered my question because it's been handed in my lap.
Mhm.
Um, or TikTok search, where I can look for that city name and see what the recommendations are from various
Mhm.
people. So it's TikTok. It's also YouTube, which obviously helps Google.
Right.
It's also Slack. There has been a huge rise in Slack communities. Uh, Facebook communities still exist. So it's a lot of almost dark web content, but it's a lot of bifurcation of different audiences going different places.
Right. So just
So
a dilution.
don't put all your eggs in one basket, is what I'm saying in
I got
summary.
it. Yeah, that's great. I think we're gonna drop the mic right there. I think that's a fantastic prediction for this year there.
Wonderful.
And I really admire any business owner who puts their values, puts their money behind their values. And so I've really appreciated this conversation about how you're doing that and how you build your talent pool for Gray and Company. So thank you so much, Tory, for joining us today on Innovative Agency. I really enjoyed our conversation. And if agencies want to learn more about what Gray and Company does and how to find you, where are some great places for them to connect with you?
Yep, you can Google gray.company. You can find us at thegray.company instead of a .com, but gray.co is where you'll find us on social media everywhere. So come hang out and say hi. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. It's good to talk with you, Tory. Take care and Happy New Year.
Same to you. Bye.
Bye.